What's up, beautiful people? It's Pretty Girl Love Trap Content here, and we are discussing training day. All right. If you don't know, you will find out, okay? Because iconic is the word I'm thinking of when I think of training day. Now, let me preface anything I say by confirming it's been probably a decade since I've watched Training Day from start to finish. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's been a while. It came out in 2001. And I can't exactly recall when I watched it. 2001, I was a junior in high school. So who knows when I actually watched this film. But something took it upon myself. I was like, you know what? Let me go ahead and review Training Day. I haven't seen it in a while. There's actually a few things that occurred that sparked this idea. So I was like, you know what? We gonna dissect Training Day together, okay? What's up, DeMarcus, Stephen Harris, Derry B? Thank y'all for coming through. Please, if you don't mind, liking the video for me, and let's have a good time talking about Training Day because there is a lot to dissect, you guys. It's starring Denzel Washington because he confirmed it's pronounced Denzel, not Denzel. Okay. He just been letting us slide for the past 5 decades. Okay. And he also is playing opposite of Ethan Hawke. He's done a phenomenal job in this film as well. But this pretty much is a story of corruption, power, abuse, good versus evil, integrity, like all the things like are discussed in this film. And it's very much, how should I say, a tragic tale, if you will, but it's entertaining and suspenseful nonetheless. Like, this movie is full of foreshadowing, full circle moments, symbolism, has a great balance of action, comedy, shock value. Okay, because I still am like, oh, I can't believe he did that. Okay, but I like to call this a psychological thriller. If I had to put it in a its own little subset genre, this is a psychological thriller, in my opinion, okay? Definitely a multi-watch film. And what I mean by multi-watch, I am pretty much stating if you watch this film one time, you can watch it again and notice new things that you hadn't noticed the first time. Like, I feel like I watched this movie numerous times and I was like, oh, didn't pick that up. All right now. So yes, definitely a classic. So we're going to get into it. Hey, Tamika's Den, thank you for coming through. I appreciate you guys for coming through. So we got to talk about this movie. And it's so much to impact. My goal is an hour, but it's a lot. Denzel put us through a whole lot. This was the longest MFing day ever, okay? It was longer than Friday, longer than Greyhound Day, like all the days, like it was long, okay? But we begin this movie with Stephen Hawke's character, Jake Hoyt, okay? Hoyt, is looking at his alarm clock. It's 4:59 a.m. Yes, I said 4:59 a.m. And his alarm is set for 5 o'clock. So as soon as that alarm hit up, I was like, I want to be like you when I grow up, Jake. Because I may possibly wake up before my alarm, but I'm snoozing like 6 times, okay? It's going to be a snooze fest for real, okay? So he wakes up 5 a.m. Hey, Candy Love, thank you for coming through. So he sees his wife breastfeeding his child, right? And next to her chair, there's actually a shrine, if you will, with Jake's photo in his officer uniform and several lit candles. So I was like, oh, he has a praying wife. And that goes to show this was a testament of the outcome of this movie because he had a praying wife. Some people have a praying grandmother, but the fact that he had a praying wife told me all I needed to know. And I don't know if I noticed this, way back when I originally watched this movie. So I was like, all right, praying wife, we starting off good, right? So throughout, them getting ready for the day, she hands him his uniform and, just some things to make sure he doesn't forget. And so she mentioned like, hey, everyone's telling me, telling you how lucky you are for this opportunity. Don't F this up. So already we got the pressure. Okay. The pressure's on. And it's also can mean a few different things. The fact that he's being told that he's lucky either means he's undeserving of this opportunity, not ready for this opportunity, or this opportunity may not be a one that comes by very often, right? But throughout this movie, we can determine which of the three it is. So we get a little ring-a-ding-ding, and his wife answers the phone. And she's all smitten and what have you. I'm like, who is you all smitten talking to? So apparently it's Alonzo, okay? It's Jake's superior. So Jake gets on the phone, and Alonzo's asking, like, hey, are you on the way to roll call? He was like, yeah. He was like, fool, we don't do roll call in this department, okay? We up here. You know, the underlings, they go roll call. He was like, okay, right. And so he was like, okay, you need to meet me at this coffee shop, this little diner at 10 o'clock. Then he proceeds to ask Jake, do you have your service weapon? He was like, yes. He was like, do you have a backup weapon? And the way he asked, then Alonzo asked this question as if he expects Jake and wants Jake to have a service weapon, right? But the kicker is when Jake says no, Alonzo was like, good. So I was like, interesting. Your tone represents that you expect or want him to have this, but when you are told that he doesn't, it's a good thing. I wonder why. We figure out later on, okay? He's trying to assess what Jake is working with. Long story short, you know what I'm saying? Not in a sexual manner, not like that, you know what I'm saying? But he's trying to figure out what Jake is up to. And throughout this movie, Alonzo is doing a bunch of testing and assessing of Jake. That's all he is doing. And I'm sorry, guys, my lighting is weird. I'm sorry, it's no LaToya Jackson filter. I don't know what's going on, but just rock with me, okay? So, they meet at the coffee shop, right? And Alonzo, he's a character. Off rip by appearance, it's giving a lot. It's not giving typical cop. He's wearing 2 chains. He got 2 chains, y'all. It's giving rapper. He's wearing a little koofy hat. He got jewelry galore. He got his holster with his, guns, visible. And I'm like, who is this guy? And on top of that, he's very rude, very direct, very condescending towards Jake. Not a welcoming at all. Like it's not giving, pleasant first day. Let me just say that. So he did offer Jake an opportunity to eat. He was like, it's on my dime, go ahead and eat. Jake was like, nah, I'm good. Alonzo was like, all right, cool. He continues to read his paper. So Jake is confused because he's like, what's going on here? So he keeps saying little things here and there. And he was like, well, I'll actually take a coffee. Alonzo said no. He shut that down. He's like, you messed that up. So immediately he's sunning him. Like, he has more of like authority in terms of more so not professional, but it's given parental. You know what I'm saying? So Jake is a little taken aback. He's clutching his pearls at this point, but he can't keep his mouth shut enough for Alonzo. So Alonzo was like, you know what? Tell me a story. Since you won't allow me to read these stories in this newspaper, I need you to tell me a story, any story, a great story. So Jake proceeds to tell Alonzo a story about a DUI stop. It includes a lot of things, premeditated offing. They find some guns, they find drugs, they find all the things. This is a great story. But Alonzo only cared if Jake actually banged his training officer, okay? He's really just one-track mind. And I'm like, okay, we're seeing more of his character coming through, all right? And Jake was like, no, I didn't bang her. I have a wife. And Alonzo was like, you have a you-know-what. You have a member, okay? And so I was like, oh, you don't care about fidelity. All right, that's a MF in check. All right. So Alonzo makes Jake pay the bill. Now, Alonzo is really only eating, it seems like he only had coffee, but I feel like this sets the tone of the rest of the movie, because what we see throughout this movie is Alonzo actually making Jake pay for something that he has absolutely, positively nothing to do with. Do y'all clock what I'm putting together? Do y'all get that? Okay. Like I said, there's a bunch of symbolism. There's a bunch of foreshadowing in this movie. So they proceed to walk across the street to the vehicle, right? And Alonzo is jaywalking. It is cute to jaywalk. No, I said cute. I'm sorry. I don't want to say that because that's technically illegal, right? Because I'm guilty. I'm guilty of jaywalking, okay? But I make sure it's safe. I make sure no cars are around. It's mid-intersection jaywalking for me. Like everybody's honking their horns. Like he's literally stopping traffic and disregarding basic laws. Now this is an officer, if you will, okay? No exam. He's not giving good example at all. At all. So he sees a menu. This is questionable, right? But I'm saying right now, he sees the menu on his dashboard. So he tells Jake to take the the menu off the not the dashboard, sorry, the windshield, and put it in the dashboard once he gets in the vehicle. And he says, the door is unlocked. So it seems like Alonzo never locks his doors. So what is that giving? It's giving I'm untouchable. It's giving God complex. The mere fact that he was over there crossing the street and just expecting the cars just to stop at the whim, like that's audacious. Okay, so he puts up the menu in the glove box, and so Jake is like, so where's the office at back at the division? Like, let me know. Alonzo said, this is the office, baby. And he had switches. This man has a Monte Carlo, okay? Let's just say that. Black, clean Monte Carlo. The accents, the chrome accents. And then this fool got the nerve to have switches. And then as soon as he hit the switches, we hear Still Dre playing. Y'all, I ain't gonna hold you. I'm not the best crip walker, but I was crip walking in my house. That was the most iconic. Like, that's like, it gotta be on a holy grail of iconic scenes. Like, that moment is so fire. So fire. Like, whoever is responsible for all that, fire. But I honestly feel like the switches, the car going up and down, it also represents the rocky roller coaster ass day that Jake is about to have. Because Alonzo is about to take Jake for an MF and ride. Okay. So he proceeds to kind of, drive Jake around, trying to get him acclimated to the streets, right? He was like, smell the air, smell the pollution. You know what I'm saying? So we kind of, have Alonzo, spewing off his stats. And clearly he's a decorated officer. He's an OG. He is very much a pro. You know what I'm saying? Like he's been in the league. I said in the league, child, but you know what I'm saying. It is kind of a league, low key, okay? But, he is decorated. He is very much accomplished. And he explains like, hey, I supervise 5. We're going to keep that mental note. I supervise 5 people. You could be the 6th if you act right. Right. So he proceeds to ask Jake, yo, why do you want to be a narc? And so Jake, he gives the textbook answer. I want to make the world a better place. You know what I'm saying? So Alonzo was like, well, you need to automatically unlearn that academy bull-ish because that's not going down in these streets. Like, we not doing that. Okay. And Jake was like, well, I'll do anything you want me to do. And Alonzo was so happy to hear that. He was like, my ninja. Y'all, I don't think I saw this in a movie theater, but I would pay money to be a fly on the wall to see people hear Denzel, African-American, A-list celebrity Denzel Washington in his first villainous role tell this Caucasian man, my ninja. Like, not saying like, the other things haven't been, captivating, but this is Denzel's first villain role. And I feel like he was like, you know what? I've been waiting on this. I'm going to murk this. Okay. And we also have to know, do some background information. Denzel, if you will, he pretty much did a lot of ad-libbing of the script. Like, I really feel like he embodied Alonzo. Like, he did so well in this role. Like, it's crazy. So, we get into some personal details. So Jake, he's a newlywed and he's a rookie. He's been in the force for 18 months, which is also questionable because I'm like, okay, you signed up to be in a department full of narcs, but you've been in the force for 18 months. The math isn't mathing, okay? The math isn't mathing, but we're going to keep, we're going to keep going in terms of the information, right? Yes, Denzel definitely won an Oscar for this role. it was controversial to certain people because they felt that he should have won for Malcolm X, but they thought this was kind of not necessarily a pity win, but they felt that he should have been won an Oscar. But nonetheless, he won an Oscar, and in my opinion, he deserves. Okay, maybe he should have got it twice, but I'm at least happy they acknowledged him for this role at the very least, right? So Alonzo tells and instructs Jake to make sure he hides his love for his wife deep inside, because this world, this department, this, profession will chew people out. So he was like, you got to make sure you hide this love, because once you show that love, that's going to allow people to weaponize it from you, right? And then, Alonzo mentions in the final cut of the movie, he says he has 4 boys. Now, when I watched the deleted scene, he says he has 6 boys. Well, we're going to get a little bit into Alonzo and the fatherhood a little later, okay? So we ride to Little Mexico, all right? Alonzo, he's peeping out the scene with his little CI/teammate, Neto, right? So he explains that Neto is, kind of working for him per se. He helped Neto's mom get out of prison. So in exchange, he allowed Neto to kind of sell the weed here and there for information on high bust, okay? Big transactions, okay? Big transactions. Let's keep that in mind, right? So they proceed to see a transaction occur, pull over the vehicle, bunch of little teenage Caucasian kids, right? Seem like they don't, I say they don't really better, but they're kind of clueless, right? So Alonzo is being very much aggressive, okay? Very aggressive, and Jake is confused and a little thrown off. He's clutching his pearls because he's like, why is this called for? Like, Alonzo was doing a whole lot, okay? But he ends up letting the people go, but he confiscates their drugs and their paraphernalia, right? So they get back in the car. And Alonzo stated a good narcotics officer needs to love and know narcotics. In fact, they need to have narcotics in their system. I'm over here looking at the screen like, what are you talking about, fool? Like, I've seen this before, but this is the type of movie where you can see 100 times and still have the same type of emotional reaction, because it's like, bro, like, what are you doing? So he asked Drake, I said Drake, Laura, is Drake talking about me? He asked Jake to, sample and smoke the weed, right? Quote unquote weed. Jake was like, no, oh my God, I would never, I haven't smoked weed, since high school. And plus, I would get fired. But Alonzo was like, no, it's cool. We get a week's advance notice for any, drug testing in the department. Jake is still like, no, I would never. Alonzo, maniac self. He stops his Monte Carlo in the middle of an intersection and proceeds to put his blicky, his firearm, at Jake's head. This has to be like noon downtown LA. It's hella busy. And he proceeds to tell him, I don't want you in my department. Because that right there, you turning down drugs in the street, that can get you murked. So, of course, Jake feeling all pressure. He was like, all right, I'll go ahead and do it. I'll go ahead and smoke the drugs. So he goes ahead and smoke the drugs. And we are in LA, right? But Jake, he puts the emphasis on being in La La Land. Because Jake is high as I don't know what. He is so high, he's dapping up Jesus. Like, he is high. Okay? And a little high than expected. I mean, I understand Cali got that good, that sticky, icky, ooh-wee, but he's definitely giving something else is going on. So, Alonzo was like, well, I know, I didn't know you like to get wet. And Jake was like, what you talking about? He was like, wet. And he was like, yeah, this is, Sherm, and he's listing off all these like street drug terms. But once he said PCP, that's when Jake was like, oh, this ain't just no regular weed. And this goes to show that Jake is out of his league off rip. You don't even know the street terminology of like common drugs. So that goes to show he does not belong here at all. at all. Like, sir, why don't you know these terms? Like, this is very common. But anywho, Jake is all upset. He's like, why did you do that to me? Whatever, whatever, whatever. Lonzo had the nerve to say, ain't like I put a gun in your head. Talk about manipulation and crazy. Okay. This is a lot already. And we probably 15, 20, not even 20 minutes into the movie, right? So Alonzo takes Jake to his quote unquote dog's house with Roger, right? So Roger, he, very welcoming. It seems like him and Alonzo is very much cool, right? So he mentions like, dang, Alonzo, I heard you had beef with the Russians and they got the green light. I was like, oh, Alonzo, you got a little drama going on. Like, let me hear more. But Alonzo kind of brushed it off. He brushed it off. Yes, Jake was very much green candy love. Gary B, you said he could have said no. So it was the situation. That is definitely fact. But, and I don't want to say to Jake's defense, I'm going to say more so from Jake's point of view. He already knows he's lucky. Like, his wife already told him, don't F this up. Everyone's saying how lucky you are. He's a newlywed, got a newborn baby. He's probably thinking, oh, there's a lot riding on this, right? And his ambition kind of, precedes him because he mentioned, when he was home that morning, like, he has dreams of, doing great with this opportunity, possibly having his own unit, right? And then he also mentioned, some of the houses, how the houses look of the people that's in Alonzo's caliber or the people that run departments. So it seems like, he's just putting a lot of pressure on himself because, he has a family to look after, it's not just him. So I can see his mindset, not saying I would have done it, but I'm just saying from the writing perspective, that's what I feel like Jake is possibly going through, right? So, y'all, Roger, I don't know if people appreciated Roger's character like they should, right? Because Roger was just so intriguing to me. And the two main scenes that he's in this movie were pretty long scenes, longer than average, I would say, for most movies. But it doesn't feel long because there's so much going on, right? But it's little nuances and little details that are so specific that if you don't catch it, you won't know what's going on, right? So, and I'm peeping out like Roger's house. It's full of books, full of magazines, and he's wearing his little robe. He seems he's giving hermit a little bit. But in the course of this scene, he's receiving like multiple calls and pages. And he answers one call and he said, pretty much tells the person, clean up your FMS, don't call me. So seems like he has some sort of authority, but he's low key, you know what I'm saying? So it's giving intriguing to me. I'm not even gonna hold you. And then, he notices how high Jake is. And shout out, if y'all haven't watched Training Day, watch it again or watch it for the first time. In this scene, the dumb, high, crazy face that Jake is giving, like top tier acting, because I believe he was high. Like, it was so hilarious. Y'all gotta peep his face. Like, it's giving like, I can't even do it. So he's looking at him. He's like, Alonzo, he's high as a kite. What did you give him? So Alonzo shows, what he gave him. He was like, oh, that's trash. But the mere fact that Roger was not surprised at all about Alonzo giving his rookie PCP, that's giving inklings to me. And I'm going to discuss what I feel about Roger and Alonzo's relationship a little later. Hey, Miss Kira, thank you for coming through, boo. I appreciate it. So Roger asked Jake for his last name. He was like, Hoyt. Where did you grow up? He said, North Hollywood. When I heard North Hollywood, I was like, yeah, you definitely out your league, okay? And then we find out that Jake was on patrol in the valley. And I'm like, it's just not adding up. Like, you're getting this opportunity with this lack of experience. Like, what's going on here? So it's given suspect. But of course, now we along for the ride. What's up, Mr. Jones? Thank you for coming through. So it took Roger 3 seconds. He was like, Hoyt, North Hollywood High, strong safety. this man knew the position that Jake was in high school on his football team. And so Alonzo was even like thrown off as surprise. Like, how the hell did you know that? Jake was feeling the same way. And of course, Roger, he was like, I pay attention to all the players. And I was like, oh, I like that. I like that. Like, Roger, I wanted more out of Roger. I wanted more. Like, he gave us enough because he served his purpose in the film. But I'm sorry, he's a fire character. So he proceeds to tell this snail joke. And pretty much he explains, like, there's a guy, he sees a snail on his porch, throws the snail away. The snail, his shell breaks. Eventually, like a year later, the snail, he gets back together and he finds himself back on the porch. And the quote unquote, like, punchline of the joke is the man telling the snail, what the F is your problem? And so Jake is ha laughing, and he's so high, he's like, why am I laughing? It's not funny. And so Roger said, he figured that joke out, you gonna figure the streets out. And Jake was like, I already figured it out. It's about smiles and cries. And of course, Alonzo, he's kind of dismissing the joke, and he's even dismissing, Jake's, reply to the joke. And I want to note, like, this is like the first scene we see that Alonzo is not necessarily in control. Like, Roger is controlling the whole thing. Yes, we're in Roger's house, but Alonzo, based on his stature, he could very much well be in other people's houses and have full control. So the fact that Roger is dominating this scene says a lot. And Alonzo even looks a little uncomfortable in the course of this joke. Like, he didn't follow the joke or understand the joke or like the joke. I don't know if he heard the joke before, because, based on the dialogue, we learned that Alonzo and Roger knew each other for a long time. So Jay pretty much said, the joke is about smiles and cries because that's all you have and nobody can take that from you. And I was like, oh, that's kind of fire. Sometimes when people get high, they get real philosophical. You know what I'm saying? Some people get dumb, but some people get real smart and philosophical when they high. So of course, Jake was kind of feeling that response. So Alonzo asked he asked Roger, like, what do you think about Jake? Do you think he has what it takes to be, a part of this squad? And Roger said, he reminds me of you, wanted to save the world. So that goes to show the arc that Alonzo went. If Alonzo was like Jake, and we see Alonzo now, like, it makes me curious, like, what occurred throughout the course of his career to make this whole 180, right? That also goes to show, like, how long Alonzo and Roger knew each other. And based on the way Roger answered that question, I'm just going to say it from my perspective, and this is the thing about this movie. There's so many unanswered questions, and it frustrates me and also intrigues me, because I'm like, dang, I need the writer to explain and confirm these things for me, because it's clear that Roger's into something kind of, illegal, right? But based on Roger's responses, I don't know. It kind of feels like Roger was a former cop. And I'm going to even go as far as I wouldn't be surprised if Roger was actually Alonzo's trainer. Just based on the little nuances. If y'all notice in the course of the movie, there's certain mannerisms that they both share. Like, even the use of the word boom. Like, we'll see that multiple times between Alonzo and Roger. Alonzo, a few times, he'd be like, boom, 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 boom. And then, he would be like, boom. And then we also, and just throughout the movie in different situations. And then Roger says boom multiple times as well. And don't get me wrong, Roger could very well just have been a drug dealer this whole time. And him and Alonzo may have just been friends through that. But I don't know. Something tells me that Roger may have been a trainer of some sorts to Denzel. Like, that's what I truly feel. And that could be completely wrong. That's kind of like a theory I have. but nonetheless, they known each other for a very long time. So Alonzo, he begins to kind of exit the home, and he, asked Roger, like, hey, what you doing later? And so Roger's like, no, I'm just chilling, gonna be at the house, save my money, because in less than a year, I'm gonna be at the Philippines, okay, Philippine Islands. Here I come. And Alonzo was like, dang, can I come with you? He's like, you invited? So I was like, all right, something's brewing here. Okay, something's brewing here. A lot of foreshadowing, I tell you guys. So back in the office, aka the Monte Carlo, Alonzo offers Jake some beer. Now, mind you, Alonzo was drinking alcohol with Roger and Jake. I don't know if Jake was given a glass, but I couldn't determine how much Jake was drinking or if he ever did drink. But the mere fact, Alonzo got a whole 6-pack in his car and he's drinking and driving. Alonzo has committed like 17 crimes in the course of this movie. But you over here in this Monte Carlo drinking and driving, and you're offering your trainee a beer, and you're claiming it's going to help level him out. No, I don't think drugs necessarily work that way. I think it's going to make him more effed up, and I think that's Alonzo's plan to keep Drake. Sorry, I don't know why Drake is talking about me. Why? He's trying to keep Jake off his rocker and inebriated. That seems like the goal, right? So Jake, he refuses the beer, right? Because he's kind of slouched over looking at the window. So as soon as he declined the beer, he noticed something going on in the alley. And I was thinking, if Jake would have actually accepted that beer can, he wouldn't have been able to see what went on in that alley. He probably would have been facing forward, drinking the beer, and that be that. And he'll not notice what's going on in the alley because this whole time he's so high, he's kind of slouched over looking, I believe to his right. You know what I'm saying? So this is kind of like an interesting, subtle thing that I noticed. So he tells Alonzo, is something going on? Stop the car, stop the car. Alonzo is not sure what's going on because Jake is so goddamn hot. So he gets out the moving car and goes through traffic. You know what I'm saying? It's giving very much, 90s action thriller. So we actually see two fiends or crackheads or bums, whatever you want to call them, junkies. They were actually assaulting a young girl. So Jake is trying to stop him. He's trying to break it up. He's having a little hard time at first, but he's able to gain control. But the fact that we learned that he played football and he was a strong safety is not coming out of nowhere. Like they're providing, the writers are providing some context as to how Jake can possibly be able to take these two, I don't want to call them strong, but you ever heard of the term crackhead strength? If you have, you should know when it comes to some drug addicts, they be strong as I don't know what, okay? But no, Jake was like, I'm a strong safety. I'm going to go ahead and handle it. So Alonzo, he peeps the whole ordeal, and he's over there nonchalantly smoking his cigarette, leaning on a wall. And then once Jake is able to gain control, he comes over, my ninja. You got some squabbles on you, boy. I said, Alonzo, you are a hot ass mess. And Jake was like, some help would have been nice. But of course, the whole time we see Alonzo is pretty much assessing and testing Jake this entire time. Of course, he did not anticipate Jake doing this. But at this point, it's training day and anything goes at this point. So long story short, Letty is the girl's name that they was trying to assault. She was a 14-year-old girl, and she was ditching school, was on the way to a ditch party, right? So in Jake's point of view, because Jake is green, he's by the book. So he's thinking, okay, we're going to hook him and book him. Time to arrest these fools and take this young girl's statement. But Alonzo, he's trying to handle it the unconventional way, okay? And he was telling the girl, all right, go back home. Tell your, cousins from Hillside Traces to go ahead and get your back. Because she was over there, threatening them fools that her cousin was going to blast on them, right? So Jake is like, hold up, like, they need to be in jail. Like, what are we doing? Alonzo was like, we don't have time for that. We don't have time for that, okay? Leave that for the uniformed officers, okay? We do the big cases around here, okay? This little extracurricular activity you trying to do, like, we got more pressing matters at hand. So meanwhile, these junkies are talking cash-ish. They are cursing Jake and Alonzo the F out. But one made a mistake and told Lonzo to suck his butt. Okay. And we already know that's pretty much the top tier of disrespect to say to a man. Okay. So Alonzo was like, for real? So he held him up to the little gate. He put a whole knife in this man's face, karate chopped his Adam's apple, took out his 2 pistols, and he was like, oh yeah. Like, I got my highlighters. This is how Alonzo was, y'all. Let me go ahead. Alonzo was like, yeah. You want me to do what? You want me to do what? So he points his firearms to the guy's, genital area. He was like, I'm gonna give you one testicle. Which one do you want? The left one or the right? The whole time Jake is behind the scenes, like, what the hell is going on? It's giving Mr. Biggs, like, he's so confused. He is so lost and not sure what's going on. But Alonzo was not playing. Like, Denzel, I'm sorry, sir. I got to give you your props because people do that method acting thing. Like, I feel like this is what he had to do to really embody Alonzo. Like, we know he's a top tier professional, but goddamn, like, he did his thing, y'all. I got it. Moment of silence. He did his thing. So he ended up pretty much, the guy's already beat up. He robbed $60 out of the other dude's pockets, smashed their pipe, and was like, all right, I'm thirsty. I want a beer. Let's go. And Jake is like, what the hell? But Alonzo was like, I'm not trying to do all that. Okay. Imagine these stinky ass junkies in the back of his clean ass Monte Carlo. Come on, y'all. If y'all ever smelled a junkie before, and not just a junkie, a homeless junkie, and that's different. Like, there's some junkies that have actual homes and that, that are clean on some level, right? But these junkies, you can tell they haven't bathed in weeks. He's not putting them fools in the back of his Monte Carlo, and he's not even trying to call for backup. So no, we're not doing that. We got pressing matters at hand, okay? Candy Love, you said with the most recent Denzel news, I can see how he could go. Yeah, I haven't watched the parent interview, but I have seen the thumbnails of people talking about it. So I definitely am probably going to catch up tomorrow to see what exactly the people are talking about. But I'm not shocked at anything, especially. Let me be quiet. I ain't about to talk about somebody else. But yeah, I'm not shocked at this point. Sometimes you can be a little disappointed, like, dang, you fell victim to this. But I'm not judging him. I'm celebrating him at this time, right? So Jake goes back to the car and he's pissed off. He's like, you let him go. Like, you get him go. Like, do you even arrest anybody? And Denzel was like, sorry, Alonzo was like, they build jails because of me. How many felons have you collared? Jake was like, none. He's like, oh, I thought so. Stop playing with me, Smokey. Like, what are we doing here? Don't be questioning my tactics. So, Jake was a little pissed off because he was like, they got street justice. They got beat up. Their drugs got stolen. Their money got stolen. Their pipe messed up. And them fools from the Hillside Tristan, it's probably going to come blast on them. So what else do you want? What's wrong with street justice? And so this line stuck out to me because as we see Alonzo's fate is actually the product of street justice. So to me, that's a thread. You live by the code, you die by the code. So, oh, child. So Alonzo, he does offer some positive reinforcements to Jake. He's constantly telling Jake throughout the movie, like, you have that keen eye. You got the magic eye. And he actually told Jake, he was like, you know what, regardless of what I said, you actually did a good thing back there. And to me, especially knowing that Alonzo was Jake. That made me a little sad because it seems like there's some sadness in Alonzo's eyes, right? It just seems like he's just like, dang, like that used to be me. I remember that. And I do feel like Alonzo had a purpose for Jake in this movie, but we also I see Jake as serving as a mirror for Alonzo, like what he used to be, what is actually right in the side of morality. You know what I'm saying? Alonzo, he represents one side and Jake represents the other. And so when he said that, it was kind of sad, right? And, Alonzo, pretty much stated like, to catch a wolf, you got to be a wolf. To protect the sheep, you got to be a wolf. And that's kind of like a message, pretty much, saying, it's pretty much a thread of, prey versus predator. What are you going to be? You going to be the victim or, or not? You know what I'm saying? So I did, like that line. That's actually a fire line. And at this point, there's so many like rocky roller coaster moments between Jake and Alonzo. It's a lot. It's becoming mentally and emotionally taxing for Jake, right? So, Alonzo mentioned like, oh, I saw you applied that chokehold, because as we know, especially when it comes to LAPD, physical force they're kind of notorious for that, right? And so earlier they mentioned, Jake mentioned like, hey, are you going to teach me that Rodney King BS? And, Alonzo was like, no, we use this. We use our brain. That's the old way. Right now, we're using our brain. As we see throughout this movie, Alonzo is pretty much telling Jake what I'm doing. I'm using my brain and manipulating the hell out of you this entire time, and you don't even know it. You wouldn't even know it, right? So Jake, respond to the chokehold, comment. He was like, I did what I had to do. And so Alonzo was like, yes, you did what you had to do. Like, see, I told you, you got to do what you got to do. But see, the thing is, the difference between Alonzo's mindset, Alonzo's thinking, okay, Jake did what he had to do. He broke the rules to do something unorthodox, right? To get something accomplished. But the actuality is Jake only bent the rules or broke the rules because he was trying to save someone innocent. It's not like he's breaking the rules for the hell of it, like Alonzo's doing. No, he actually has a purpose for breaking said rules or laws. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of the difference in mindset when it comes to Alonzo, right? He's trying to manipulate Jake, trying to make him know like, oh, it's okay to break the rules and do what you have to do. But he's not understanding like Jake don't have that same mindset. Like it's totally different. Jesus Christ. So Alonzo, he ends up, insinuating like, wolf noises. I mean, that's probably horrible. I sound like a howling dog, but y'all get the point. So they're over there bonding because they're over there, howling like wolves, whatever. And Jake was like, what, give me that beer. So they having a cute bonding moment. Like this is giving toxic relationship, guys. It's giving toxic relationship. Very much so. Okay, very much so, y'all. I've been so into this movie, I haven't even been changing my damn slides. My apologies. I've been so passionate about what the heck's going on because it's so good. This is so good, you guys. Okay, so y'all, it's training day, so we got to do some more training. So Jake is doing a fake drug buy, okay? By he's accounting. Sorry, it's hilarious because he's over there with Snoop in the wheelchair. Snoop's character's name is Blue, okay? I mean, it's not a stretch because he's a Crip. So I guess, he probably was asked, hey, what do you want your character name to be? Okay. So the whole time they're in Alonzo's vehicle. Now, Alonzo is making a point not to make eye contact with Blue, but Blue is looking dead in Alonzo's face. And so Blue comes up to Jake. He was like, what you need? Jake was like, I want to buy some crack. Like, this fool don't know nothing about nothing. So, of course, Blue was like, I smell pig. You know what I'm saying? You pretty much insinuating like, you look like a cop. You look like a rookie, okay? So he wheels his behind off, and then Jake looks at Alonzo. He was like, "What you want me to do?" He was like, "Go ahead, fetch, dog." So Jake ends up chasing Snoop down, and the whole time he's like, "Come on, man, give me a break, give me a break." I said, "What cop tells a criminal to give him a break?" Like Snoop is about to put the brakes on his wheelchair, and was like, "All right, you can arrest me." Like, who is doing that? Who is doing that, Jake? Get out of here. Get out of here. What's up, OT? Thank you for coming through. So Blue ends up kind of going inside of this a Korean, wig store, what have you. And Alonzo kind of comes in because the owner is going crazy. She's, just not to be racist or, she's just going in Korean, right? And so Alonzo, he has his badge up. He was like, ding dong dong, ding dong dong. I know. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm sorry. This is who I am. I'm sorry. Just accept me, okay? I'm not trying to be, I'm trying to be politically correct, but not, okay? Okay, y'all get it. Y'all get it. It's just jokes, but I'm telling the story how I'm gonna tell the story. So he's calming the owner down, but I love the fact that they're showing like he knows all these languages, like he knows how to work the streets, which is important if you're gonna be a narc. Okay, you gotta be able to rip and run and move throughout different environments. So they stop. They stopped Snoop, and Snoop actually fell out his wheelchair, so they're trying to help him up. So long story short, Alonzo is pretty much like, "Hey, who you work for?" And Snoop was like, I don't do no, don't sell no drugs anymore. You know that. You know that. And Alonzo was like, "I don't believe that." So Snoop actually, swallowed his crack. So he made him pretty much throw up a little bit. So we see all these little crack rocks. We see a blicky. We see all these bullets. He was like, "You federally effed up right now. So I need you to tell me who you working for." And it's crazy because if Jake was really paying attention to the dialogue between between Blue and Alonzo, he should have been able to deduce, like, they have history. They have some history. Like, they are familiar with each other, but I want to attribute to Jake being off his rocker because he's still a little high, a little drunk. But in certain moments, like him chasing down Snoop, he seems like completely in his right mind. So it's like, I don't know to give him sympathy and grace for having drugs in his system and not catching and peeping certain things or not. Like, I don't really know what to feel in terms of Jake, right? Lonzo was misunderstood. He was really a good guy per OT Lungs. Okay, per OT Lungs, Lonzo was misunderstood. Okay. Now, I do have a perspective on Alonzo. I'm not really going to go into it right now because that's a whole nother thing. But I can actually see how people can view that point of view. Okay. But I'm just going to tell the story, based on, I feel like, the general consensus of Alonzo being the antagonist and the anti-hero. So Snoop states, he ain't no snitch. And Alonzo was like, "All right, cool, but just give me a name." So he's like, "Sandman," but he in the county. So when you say somebody in the county, that can either mean two things. It can mean they in the outskirts and not in the city in terms of their residence or where they work at, or that they locked up, right? So they leave Snoop, because they don't lock him up. And it's funny because Alonzo, we hear him repeatedly ask people, "You want to go to jail? You want to go home? You want to go to jail? You want to go home?" Like, there's several lines that he repeats to numerous people throughout this movie. And that's one of them, right? So he goes to the car, right? Uses his cell phone to call Bob. Bob apparently has a gang book. So he asks Bob for the residence of a Sandman. Now, in the previous scene where Alonzo and Jake pulled over those teenagers, Jake was about to call for backup via dispatch. So it's kind of interesting. I don't want to dig too deep into it, but I also want to point out that Alonzo made very much sure that Jake didn't have any contact or communication with anybody else on the force for the most part, right? he didn't meet him at the building. They met at a diner. He's been in a quote unquote office, aka the Monte Carlo, all day. He, refused to allow him to call anything in. So I believe he's doing that to pretty much alter and control the perspective of Jake, because he is using Jake for, a tool. Of course, we'll reveal that a little bit later. So when Alonzo asked for Sandman's residence, right? I believe his real name was Kevin. He mentioned to Bob, like, hey, he may be in the county. So like he's saying he may be locked up, but they never really confirmed if he was locked up or not, right? So they go to his address now. We in Imperial Courts, and I feel like Imperial Courts is near Watts. Y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, and y'all if y'all familiar, but that's a kind of interesting part of LA. Colorful part, shall I say, okay? This is Crip land, okay? We see nothing but Crips, and they strapped up, okay? All around, all around Sandman's residence. Okay, well, not really the actual house, but in the neighborhood, right? So Alonzo, he goes in the trunk, tells Jake to put on, this kind of officer jacket, tells him to grab the Chinese menu, and he's going to, pretend that's actually a warrant to enter Sandman's house. So he knocks on the door and he's looking for Sandman, but we hear a woman on inside of the house was like, he's not here. He's at the Honor Ranch. He's at the Honor Ranch. So I did my Googles, and Honor Ranch is a location, but one of the first things that came up that they have a correctional facility there, right? So I'm thinking, okay, if we hear Blue say that Sandman is in the county, okay? And then we hear his wife, aka Macy Gray, say he's in Honor Ranch. In my head, I'm like, okay, maybe Alonzo is aware that Sandman is locked up, and maybe that's why he has the audacity to go in his house to steal his money, because that's what he is there for. You know what I'm saying? He goes, has Jake, have a blicky on, Sandman's wife and their nephew, and he proceeds to do a search, right? He immediately goes to the bedroom to do the search, and it's apparent that he finds something because he gets quiet for a little bit. Jake peeps it. So meanwhile, Sandman's wife, she on it. She asking Jake, like, yo, where's your backup? Where's the warrant? I'm supposed to get a copy of the warrant. She's like, oh, you a rookie. Like she's peeping everything, okay? Because when you in that lifestyle, you gotta be street smart. You gotta know a thing or two, right? So Alonzo was like, you know what? I made a mistake. I found absolutely nothing. And proceeds to leave. And she's like, hold on, let me see that warrant. So he look at Jake. He hands Sandman's wife the takeout menu. And she was like, ain't this some shit? Ain't this something? Y'all ain't no real cops. Y'all ain't no real cops. So they go into the vehicle. So she's telling the Crips across the street, y'all over there sitting all pretty and whatnot, come blast on these fools because they took my bread. So it starts a whole gunfight, y'all. We out here broad daylight, pew, 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 and pew, pew, pew. And just so happened, the Monte Carlo is stalling and not starting up. I said it was running smoothly at 10 o'clock this morning. So all of a sudden now it ain't working. Is that the Lord? Or you not doing full maintenance on your vehicle, Alonzo, sir? We need to tune up an oil change or something. Like, come on now. This is not the time for you be having this vehicle and it not working. I'm sure you can get the charges covered by the department. Go ahead and get your service done, sir. You over here robbing folk and the car not starting. So he made sure he told Jake to stay in the car, protecting his asset, right? Protecting his asset seemingly so. So Alonzo, he gets the blickies. These are blickies. He over there pimp sideways, OG Bobby Johnson style, like pimp. Definitely not, and I'm saying not like a typical police officer. Typical police officer like this, right? Like this. He over here sideways, pimp, like a gangster. So at this point, you should be able to deduce that Alonzo Harris is more of a gangster with a badge than an actual policeman with some swag. Because there's no way you over here doing this. And he told Jake, you know what I'm saying, on the way inside of the house, like, we the police, we do whatever the F we want. Oh, child. So, Alonzo was able to those Crips were actually not really effective at all. Like, I don't know if y'all need to go to the gun range or what, but Alonzo ends up getting away, but he actually got 3 shots in the back of his back window. Okay, they messing up a fine automobile. Shout out to Ike Turner and what's love got to do with it. So we over there got shot up in the vehicle, right? So we peel off. We on the highway, and Jake was like, "That was not cool, bro. Totally not cool. Open fire in the neighborhood, like, this is not right." So he tells Jake on the highway, freeway, whatever, to pull over. And he tells Jake, if there's too much for you, cool, go back to Valley Patrol, whatever you got to do. But you got to be all in with me. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got to be all or nothing. And you got to decide if you're going to be a sheep or if you're going to be a wolf. You got to make your decision. And of course, at the end of the movie, we see what Jake ends up deciding by force, okay? But this is a lie. Jake is tired. We ain't getting no break, okay? We've been smoking PCP, drinking, gunfights, drug deal. Like, it's a lot, okay? Can we cut this training day off short? Because I'm tired watching it. So I know Jake is tired. Like, what are we doing here? Like, for real. So it's actually, it seems like it's lunchtime, right? Because now we enter in the jungle. Now, if you don't know, the jungle is an infamous location in LA. You might not want to go there if you don't know nobody that lived there. And if you do know somebody that lived there, you still might not want to go there. Okay. So, at least Jake is familiar. He's familiar with the jungle. Like, he at least knows this area in terms of, by the name and the characteristics. He never been there, but at least I could say Jake is familiar with the jungle, right? So we see Terry Crews on a roof flipping pigeons, and of course Alonzo is explaining to Jake, that's pretty much a signal, a warning to let all the thugs know that he's in the neighborhood, okay? Because he pretty much got everybody in check, and he knows if they mess up, if they cross him, he gonna be taxing that ass, okay? And he's over here with the gangbangers, right? And so Bones, the main, I must call him the main blood, right? He's over there thanking Alonzo, like, hey, Alonzo, I appreciate what you did with my little cousin. He was like, no problem. As soon as Alonzo, left his eyesight, he was like, I can't stand this MF. So apparently, there's an intense relationship going on, and Alonzo, he's over there flirting with the residents. Like, this fool is a lot, okay? But through the several instances we've seen with Alonzo and criminals, it's very apparent that he's using leverage as a form of manipulation to maintain this clout and this fear and this power and dominance over these criminals, right? So they proceed to go up these stairs, and Jake was like, where are we going? He was like, one of my dimes, one of my lovelies, you know what I'm saying? 11 touch, okay? Now, he said he had a black queen this morning. Well, he said my queen. I don't know if he said black queen. But he opened the door, and he straight started swapping saliva and spit with Sarah, a.k.a. Eva Mendes. To the point where Jake is not even seeing, because they over here, touching face, okay? And so he, introduces her to Jake, and we see she has a little boy, watching TV, right? So Alonzo instructs her to, fix him a plate because it's lunchtime. We got to get some nourishment. Okay, we've been doing a lot today. So she explains to Jake, like, hey, you're going to watch whatever you want. pretty much just disrespected her son by having this stranger control the TV, and the little boy just want to watch little cartoons. But she's like, you know what? I gotta go. So we already know what that means. She done fed Jake, and now she about to put it on Alonzo, okay? And so we see hours done pass. They've been in that room for a long time, okay? A long time, okay? And she's a beautiful El Salvadorian woman or what have you, okay? Shout out to Eva Mendes. And so we see Jake done fell asleep with the little boy. They bonded. They probably had a good old meal, watched little cartoons, and then they took a nap. Okay, that's what I'm talking. That's a good meal for you. One of them good meals that you've been having a long day at work, and you don't stuff your stomach and take that good nap, and you wake up. And I can say for me, wake up, you possibly got a little drool inside of your mouth. That's a good ass sleep. Okay, so Alonzo, he points one of his firearms at Jake's knees, and he was like, time to wake up. Time to wake up. We got a meeting in 15 minutes, right? So Jake gets up, but Alonzo sits down on a couch, and he looks at the little boy, and so he starts talking Spanish to the little boy. And I ain't gonna hold you guys. I had to use my Googles to figure out what the hell Alonzo was telling this little boy, right? But he pretty much was asking generic questions, you know, to the boy, like, hey, you know, how are you? You've been doing good. You're growing. You know what I'm saying? Are you behaving well? So the little boy, you know, he's responding like nonchalantly. And then Alonzo, he gazes at the little boy. He's looking at this little boy in a certain manner. And he kisses his hand and transfers the kiss to the boy's forehead, right? And I don't know, the look was like kind of out of care, some sort of concern. And it seems like there was some sadness behind that look, right? And so when he leaves, Sarah, she's kind of, you know, got her little robe on, and she has kind of like the same sentiment, like kind of like sadness and possibly regret on some level, right? So I'll talk a little bit more about the little boy and Alonzo in a minute. But we go to a meeting, right, with the three wise men. And they are some top tier people, okay, in the LAPD. Okay, we got Captain Lou Jacobs, Stan Gertzy, who runs the DA shooting team. Now, fun fact, he's played by Tom Berenger. And my mom, way back when, she used to drive limousines. My mom used to drive like every vehicle you could think of, like dump trucks. Like my mom is like, you know, she could drive anything. Okay, it got wheels on it. She gonna drive it, right? So at one point, she used to drive limousines, and Tom Berenger was actually one of her clients, and she always talked about how polite he was, how kind he was to her. And I love that, because some of the few celebrity clients that she did have, she always, you know, it always was great to her. So it's good to know that, you know, the character of some of these actors, you know, are positive, okay? But just a little, you know, a little fun fact. So he meets the three wise men at this restaurant. They're kind of like at a steakhouse or what have you, right? So he introduces them to Jake, but he shoos Jake off to another table as if it's Thanksgiving and they got an adult table and a kids table. He was like, all right, go and get your little baseball steak or something. Like I said, he's constantly sunning Jake, right? So the three wise men, they're looking at, you know, Alonzo. It's like, well, I don't know why you're here. We don't talk to dead men. I heard you had an expensive weekend in Vegas. And he was like, the Russians don't care if you're a cop. Okay. They will whack you. And I was like, oh. And so we're getting more and more information about what the hell Alonzo had going on last weekend. Vegas, Russians, whacking. Hate to be you. Okay. So they was pretty much asking Alonzo how he anticipates on getting out of this. He was like, well, I just got to pay them. Like, he's very nonchalant, right? But he was like, you know, it's not my town, you know, just kind of not really taking accountability and really playing like ignorant in terms of his actions that weekend. But I'm like, you in LA. Vegas is a 4-hour drive. I know, I've driven to Vegas and LA. Boring drive, calm drive, but boring. But Vegas to LA, that's kind of like a little weekend getaway, weekend trip. You know what I'm saying? Like, That's not your town. You don't know. You don't know how to operate. You don't know how to have human decency. Okay, Alonzo, whatever. So he pretty much explained that he's going to cash in one of his oldest accounts. You know, he's a high security risk. It is what it is, right? So it was kind of pondering, like, did they end up, approving it, right? So Alonzo asked, well, who's driving, right? And so Tom Berenger's character was like, I am. So the next thing, well, we actually also hear one of the characters explain this story about this female judge and a criminal pleading or pretending to be insane. I don't know the necessarily like the writer's intent to include in this story, but what I took from it is an undertone of kind of gender biases, because they kind of mentioned like this female judge and how she couldn't see through the BS that the criminal was kind of giving her. So I don't know if that's the writer's intent, but that's what I got from the story, how women are perceived in law enforcement and politics. Because even stemming back from the diner scene in the beginning, Alonzo didn't care nothing about the great job that Jake did with the DUI stop. All he cared about is if he banged his, training officer or not. You know what I'm saying? So that was kind of interesting. So they leave, right? They're in the parking lot. So Jake peeps Alonzo put a bunch of money in the guy's trunk. So Alonzo was like, hold up, like, you got that from Sandman? Like, what's going on here? So he was like, well, do you really want to know what's going on with this money? He was like, yeah, well, nothing's free in this world, not even arrest warrants. But how funny is it, right, that Alonzo used a Chinese takeout menu as a way to but weasel his way to gain money so he could use that money to obtain a real police warrant. Like, what the hell? What the hell? Okay. And mind you, it was $40,000 that he took from Sandman. That's what I'm saying. Like, Alonzo had to have known that Sandman was locked up, because there's no way he would risk or gamble Sandman being in the vicinity or in that house, taking his bread like that, with him possibly thinking that Sandman was free roaming the streets. Because that was very much risky, okay? Like, what we doing here? What we doing here, Alonzo? And mind you, Alonzo's still drinking. He had a drink with the three wise men and everything, so he been liquored up. And it's given he has a possibly a gambling problem because he was in Vegas. But we at least see he has a drinking problem. I don't know if this is everyday occurrence or he's just stressed out for the events that happened last weekend and what he got going on this day. But he has been drinking all day. All day. Yes, Derry. I know Sandman had been pissed off when he got that call. Not even when he got out. When his wife, Macy Gray, with that voice, told him that, man, you done stole my money. They done stole our money. They done stole all our money. Sandman walking around that cell pissed off. Ain't want to eat not ramen noodle packet or nothing up in the pen. Losing hella weight because 40 G's. And, they was in the hood. It's not like they was affluent. He probably was just, of course he had like Blue, aka Snoop Dogg, working for him. So he's probably like a mid-level dealer. But 40 G's ain't nothing to sneeze at all. At all, right? So we see Alonzo, he in the car with Jake, and he's over there making calls. He assembling his team, like, yo, we got the green light. We got to get things together. The whole time, Jake in the passenger seat, like, what the hell is going on here? Like, Jake probably feels like he is in a twilight zone. Like, he is probably hella confused at this point. So we meet Alonzo's team, right? And it includes, Paul, aka Dr. Dre. So we get a lot of celebrity appearances in this particular film, right? But, and this is a question I have that I'm a little annoyed that they didn't really answer this for me. So earlier in the vehicle, Alonzo mentioned he has a team of 5 men that he oversees. And Jake could be number 6. but we only see 4 men. So where is the 5th man? What happened to him? Where he at? Like, and I'm gonna just say this now before I forget. This movie had me pondering how deep this ploy was, right? Because I'm like, okay, what is the actual point of Jake, right? And we want to break it down in this next scene with Roger, but do the events that Alonzo is doing in this course of this day. Apparently, it's clear that he had a plan for Jake. But if he were to think that his plan, I don't know, it just feels like he could have probably executed what he needed to without Jake being even in the equation, because Jake is green. There's so many things, so many different variables that could have happened that Jake could have messed up. You know what I'm saying? So it's like you went so far as to plan this perfect situation. Why would you risk it by having somebody as green as Jake a part of this plan? Like, is he supposed to replace that 5th person that we don't see? Like, I don't know. That those are the things that question me. But I can also justify why he did select Jake, right? Because he is green and he can take the fall for certain things and not have any control, because we see Alonzo has been making sure that Jake has been licking and drugged up all damn day. And he's been making sure that he is isolated. As I stated, he doesn't meet anybody else from the department. They've been in the quote-unquote office, aka the Monte Carlo, the entire day. He made sure that Jake did not call anything into dispatch. So, when it comes down to Alonzo really breaking down the story and from his point of view, they would have to, on some level, trust his word on Jake, because nobody has had the interactions with Jake to be able to confirm if things are true or not. So he's able to, narrate any story that he wants, because nobody really can tell Jake's character because they ain't seen the fool. Candy Love, you said, was Roger number 6 or was he included in the 5? I don't believe, and I thought about that, but I don't believe Roger is number 6 because he's not a part of the league. Like, I can't keep saying league, but a part of the force at all. And we kind of learned that in this upcoming scenes, right? So we end up at Roger's house. So we got the arrest warrant for Roger, right? So the crew come in, blasting, their guns in Roger's face. And Roger's like, Alonzo's going to have y'all tell, like, what are y'all doing? And next thing we see is Alonzo there. So he's like, what's going on, dog? Like, what's going on, brother? So Alonzo was like, I had a meeting with the 3 wise men, and they kind of want to tax you a little bit. They got, side chicks and vacations to fund or what have you, right? So, Roger's pissed off, but, at this point, he has no choice. He's got to fork up the money or, possibly be sent to jail, right? So we got shovels and all these supplies. But so we see Alonzo, kind of quarterbacking the whole scene. So he instructs Jake and I believe one of his other men to kind of go into the kitchen. So they end up doing some digging and putting a hole in the kitchen, right? And Alonzo ensured, like, hey, there's no money that you want to miss. So apparently Alonzo was very much aware where Roger's money was. So that means that they were hella close. With somebody like Roger, who I am wholeheartedly in the impression that he completely has his head on a swivel for some level. He seemed relaxed, but a character like Roger, from what I've seen, he's not just going to tell anybody where his money is. So that means he trusted Alonzo and or possibly underestimated him, right? So it takes a while for them to dig up this money, and they kind of show that by the amount of cigarette butts that Alonzo has on the floor. He's smoking cigarette the whole time, watching them dig this money, right? He done went through like 5 cigarettes. 5 cigarettes. So we finally get the money. And so they, Jake, he don't know what's in there. He thinking it's possibly drugs. He don't know. So it ends up being money. And so Alonzo starts cutting it open. And the first package of money he throws at Jake, right? And he was like, dang, $250K on your first day. Like, that's a come up. So Jake was like, excuse me? Excuse me, say what? And so he was like, yeah, that's your cut. You know what I'm saying? Jake was like, no, I can't take this. And so the other crew members are looking like, oh, hell no, we can't trust this fool. He too goody two shoot. But see, the crazy part is I'm still not understanding the math. The math isn't mathing. So I'm just going to fast forward just a teeny bit, right? Because when we go to Smiley house, we're going to get there. But Smiley confirms that Alonzo needs $1 million, right? Now, Alonzo mentioned that there's over $4 million in Roger's little, buried money. But he mentioned, hey, we got over a $3 million seizure. So Jake was like, no, you just told me there's over $4 million. Roger was like, well, there's no taxation without representation, meaning they're going to shave money off the top. They're going to take some money off, right? So now this is where I'm confused, right? Because he hands Jake $250K as if that's his cut. And he proceeds to ask his other teammate, person that, he throws another stack at him. He was like, well, I'm comfortable with it because Jake said he wasn't comfortable. So I'm assuming that's another $250K that he's giving his, team member, right? So I'm like, okay, if you have 4 guys that's there, $250K times 4, that's $1 million. If y'all are taking a little over $1 million off the top of what y'all going to record as a seizure per se, how are you getting your $1 million, Alonzo? That's the part I'm confused. He says he doesn't give an exact number. He says over 4 million. So let's just say it's 4.5 million. Right? We're just going to round up a little bit. You know what I'm saying? I don't even feel like it's that much. And somebody mentioned, I believe it was Smiley, he mentioned that Alonzo has dirty money all over, right? So maybe Alonzo came up with a good bit of the money and just needed a little more out of Roger. I don't know, but they didn't really, it was kind of loose when it came to this dollar amount and this money situation. I don't want to harp on it too long, but I just wanted to mention that was a little confusing to me. It wasn't completely clear. So it is what it is, right? So Jake refuses to take the money, so it's hella awkward, right? So Alonzo sits Jake on the couch, and he instructs Jake to shoot Roger. And Roger's not having any noticeable emotional reaction to this request, right? And he was kind of taking it as a joke. Yeah, no, shoot me, boom, boom. He's kind of playing into it as a joke, and maybe he's thinking Alonzo is just joking. But then Alonzo was because Jake is refusing. So Alonzo was like, close the blinds in here. You know what I'm saying? We're trying to cover what we're doing in here. And still, Roger is still kind of playing into it or not having a reaction to it. So I'm a little confused on what's perceived here from Roger's perspective. Roger, what do you think is going on here? So pretty much Alonzo was like, well, if you ain't going to do it, I got to go ahead and do it. So we see Alonzo get up from the couch, go by the door, and he shoots Roger from the door. And it's one of those, I don't know if it's considered a machine gun, but he got 5-6 holes in his chest. And he was like, yeah, breathe through it. He's expecting, of course, Roger to die, right? So, of course, Jake is like, what is going on? Hold up. I was just being over here drinking in this man's house 5 or 6 years ago. Ms. Kira, that is a good question. I did notice when Alonzo and Jake visited Roger earlier that day, Roger did a subtle to his nose. And we already know what that means. So that kind of insinuated that, Roger, he may be, dipping into the nose candy a little bit. So he possibly could have been high at that point. But Roger also gives me, I can still be high, but still know what the hell going on. You know what I'm saying? He seems like that seasonal type person. So, of course, Jake is confused. So at this point, Alonzo was like, all right, let me quarterback this thing. That's, he's pretty much instructing or breaking down the story for everyone to tell the other investigators when they come, because they have to call this in, right? So they're pretty much, trying to say that this was an open fire when trying to serve an arrest warrant. So they try to make it seem like they came in legitly, tried to, give Roger an arrest warrant or, serve it to him. And Roger was pretty much not trying to go out without a fight. And Roger ended up shooting at them and it became like a whole thing, right? So in order to make that story believable, Denzel needed to shoot one of his men. So the man had a bulletproof vest, but apparently one of the bullets went through and he really shot him. So Jake is really like, what the heck is going on here? So in this story, Alonzo is stating that Jake shot Roger, but Jake was like, I didn't shoot Roger, you did. So Alonzo proceeds to have and say this mock police report. He's he's running down this thing. How the news would say an LAPD narcotics officer was gunned down today serving a high-risk warrant in Echo Park. He survived an infant, yada yada yada. Like he's not kind of going down, he's pretty much threatening Jake, if you understand, right? And so he has the gun cocked and pointed at Jake. He was like, you get the picture? Jake was like, yeah, I get the picture. Next thing we know, Jake did some karate type ish and he ends up confiscating and unarming Alonzo and having a gun pointed at him. He was like, this is the second time you put a gun in my face and it won't be a third. And of course, Lonzo, he's like, my ninja. Like, I'm like, yo, Denzel is off the hook because that is the last response I am expecting in this situation, right? So the rest of this Alonzo's team got their blickies pointed at Jake because they ready to off him. Like it's easier for them to off Jake because he's not going along with the plan. He's making things difficult. So Alonzo was like, hey, Jake, this ain't something we do every day, okay? I know it's a Tuesday, but we don't do this every day, okay? Like, just rock with us. You gonna earn a medal for all this. Like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, but this is how it's going to go. You know what I'm saying? Stick with me for 18 months and I'm going to give you a career. So he has his team go around and kind of, explain like where they're being promoted to and this is. And Jake, based on Jake's integrity, he doesn't want that. He wants to be able to earn his spot. He's not down with the corruption. He's not down with any of this BS. So he's not really trying to hear it. But Alonzo is telling him like, yo, there are 5 officers in this room that's saying that you shot Roger. So it's 5 against 1. And you've been smoking PCP all day. So I'm going to make sure they get your blood work done. And he was like, you've been planning this all day? Lonzo was like, I've been planning this all week, son. Yo, this is a lot. A whole lot. So now as the audience, it's revealed to us, the actual reasoning or most of the reasoning of Alonzo's actions. We learn a little bit more a little later, right? But this is my take. This is what I feel about the Roger situation, right? Because I wholeheartedly feel that Roger was an ex-dirty cop. I really feel like that. I really feel like he trained Alonzo, and in some way, Alonzo killing Roger and stealing from him is kind of like some way of Alonzo's justice for being turned out. And I could be completely wrong, but this is how I feel like I'm kind of interpreting this situation. I wish I had the writer's phone number to really confirm this for me, but I really feel like Alonzo is so sick of himself. I feel like he puts on a good front, right? Outwardly, externally seems like he's confident, self-assured, just a man that just loves himself, right? But deep down, especially knowing where he came from in this career, I really feel like Alonzo hates his own effing guts. We see him drowning his sorrows in liquor. I won't say sorrows. That sounds kind of like dramatic. But if y'all understand what I'm saying, like Alonzo I just feel like he's just self-loathing on some level. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like he feels like he's a despicable ass person, but he's so far gone, he can't stop. He just keeps doing lie over lie, deception over deception, control, deceit, like all the negative traits that we see Alonzo doing. He's saving that, thereby he's trying to save his own life. But I feel like low key, he don't even really care about his life like that. I really feel like that. And I really feel that this plot on Roger, yes, he's trying to save himself, but I also feel like on some level it's probably some internal justice if Roger is in fact the person that trained Alonzo to make him corrupt, just how like Alonzo was kind of doing with Jake on some level. But that's just my thoughts. Like I said, I could be wrong, but that's just kind of how I feel and my little theory on the background of Jake and Alonzo. Now, of Roger and Alonzo. Now, Roger could have been very much just a dealer that Alonzo met early in the game, and they kind of formed some friendship. But I feel like, and not to say when you have a friendship, you guys don't tend to like emulate each other's actions, because like I mentioned, they both have certain mannerisms. They both, throughout the movie, you say boom, 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 boom. We heard Roger's perception of Alonzo when he first got into the force, right? So I'm not saying that friends don't end up emulating each other on some level, but I just really feel like Roger trained Alonzo. And I feel like Alonzo, like Roger was in some way possibly also Roger's idol. Like Roger was, he had money saved up. He was about to be on a forever vacation. And Alonzo probably wanted a piece of that. You know what I'm saying? Like Roger was in a position where he was just at the house chilling. He ain't got to do nothing. He could just run whatever he running from a phone call. You know what I'm saying? So it could have been jealousy. It could have been envy. It could have been a multitude of things. I don't completely know the writer's intent. I'm just being off what I possibly feel that may be going on with this relationship. But I don't know if people really paid attention or really invested in the Roger character. Like, it's such a good character. And I honestly don't think I did when I initially watched the film in the beginning when it was first released. So it's just something that I'm learning to kind of pay attention to now more, as a reviewer and, just a person who's older and has more experience and seen more things, right? So at this point, we've gotten our story together. Paul, aka Dr. Dre, he called in the ambulance because we actually did shoot our team member. So we fast forward a little bit and we see that the other departments have shown up, all the other, investigators, ambulance, all the emergency vehicles are there. The helicopters around surrounding this situation. So it's a big deal. And Jake is across the street watching this corrupt ass team playing everybody like a fiddle. Like, they over there just acting like they did this whole heroic situation and everything was all good. Alonzo dapping people up. We see old boy on the gurney looking like he about to get a medal possibly. Like, Jake is over it. Okay. So now Jake is by the car. So Alonzo is on his way to the car. He's on the phone, right? The same phone he was on the phone with Bob. Now, on this phone call, we hear Alonzo say, you need to stay off that rice, but just make sure that bathtub is clean, homie. Now, when I first watched this movie back in the day, I don't think I necessarily paid attention to this dialogue, but it kind of, foreshadows what's going to happen in a minute, right? So he pretty much signals Jake to come in the car, right? And Jake is pissed off. Okay, he's MFing tired. Okay, and he's pretty much like, we just committed robbery and murder. And he was like, that was your friend. And Alonzo was like, because he knew my first name, he was my friend. No, he so poisoned the kids. I watched him operate with impunity for 10 years. This ain't checkers. This is chess. I played him, and this is what I do. And I'm thinking like the audacity, you over here, Alonzo, trying to be over here thinking that you're saving folk. But I'm not buying it. Jake could possibly buy it, but I ain't buying it because at the end of the day, you was treated pretty much trying to get this man bread. If you didn't need no bread to save your life, you wouldn't have done this. So don't act like you over here doing a good deed trying to save the world. Like, no. But he's trying. I got my red cup for the buffoonery of Alonzo. Okay. So, so, you know, he's feeding Jake all this. He's not really trying to hear it, right? But he has like a wad of money in his hand, right? He kind of waving the money. He was like, Jake, it'll make us and the guys feel better if you take this money. Pretty much, you know, I don't know if it's supposed to be his cut because it definitely wasn't the same amount of money that he had in the house. But he was like, no, I'm not taking that money, right? So he was like, you know what, Jake, I'm sorry. I exposed the corruption. I'm sorry. Because Jake was ready. He was like, I'll go to my other department. I don't got to do all this, right? And Alonzo was like, you know what? I understand. There's a lot to take in. But if you want to change things, just be patient. And you can have my job. You know what I'm saying? You can go ahead and make things better from the inside. But you got to take your time. You got to be patient with it, right? And he was like, okay, well, my team is going to coach you on what to tell the DA. So he pretty much took him to wherever the DA was to get his story, right? Because I'm thinking Alonzo needs Jake to clear Alonzo's name and to justify his story. He just quarterback on paper, okay? So, man, mind you guys, it's still daylight. We did all this, and it ain't even 6 o'clock yet. I'm tired for Jake, okay? I am effing tired for Jake. So, y'all, oh Lord, I'm tired. I'm tired. Alonzo has put me through a lot. So it's finally nightfall, and we see Alonzo and Jake. They go into Hillside Transit. This is a neighborhood. We heard about it earlier from Letty, who was being assaulted by those junkies, right? So we stop at this house and we park, and he opens the trunk. And, you know, he made reference to the appliances earlier when we was at Sandman's house, how, you know, he helps his CIs or, you know, especially the ones that's locked up. He likes to help, you know, give gifts to their family to help them out. He's actually, you know, do some good in the community, right? So there's a CD player box and a blender box. Jake is holding a blender box, right? So they're going through this this little street, and it's so fitting because we're in like the height of the Mexico gang turf, and they're playing Cypress Hill. It's so fire, and they're pressing Alonzo like, you know, do you belong here? What you doing here? Yada yada yada, right? So it was interesting because it's like, I don't know. I just perceived the scene like Alonzo should have been known in that neighborhood, because if this is your CI, you help them often. So I don't know. I have a theory about that, but I'm not going to go far to talk that, right? So long story short, we go to Smiley's house, right? And Smiley is a very, I should say, kind of scary looking gangster, okay? And so we go to Smiley, we hand him the appliances, right? Now he's in the kitchen with two other guys, Moreno and Sniper. Now, all three are notable actors, you know, in Hollywood, right? So very familiar faces. So Alonzo says he's going to the bathroom. He'll be right back. So he leaves Jake in the kitchen with Smiley in them, right? So Smiley opens up the blender box. The blender has money in it. So he calls this young lady to count the money, right? And that could be totally off. But the way Smiley grabbed that money, it looked as if it's the same exact wad of money that Alonzo was trying to have Jake take in the vehicle earlier that day. Like, just the way the money looked, because Smiley was kind of doing the same kind of hand motion with that money. But nonetheless, this is the money that Alonzo is paying Smiley to off Jake. Now, this is very poetic, if you will, because Jake was literally carrying the money that is used to off him, thereby pretty much carrying his own fate, for lack of a better, saying, right? And then when they was in Roger's house, Alonzo was pretty much calling off his team not to murder Jake. He was saying, like, no, he's just a little nervous. Like, he was sparing Jake's life, right? But we see he was talking to Smiley when they was leaving Jake's house, because the reference of rice, okay, not to be racist, but the reference of rice, the reference of bathtub, and using the word homie. Homie is a widely used term when it comes to, sparing your people, in a sense, right? Mexican, if you want to be specific. So, and I thought, like, okay, if you really wanted Jake to be dead, you could have technically did it at Roger's house, but no, that's too messy. That we need to explain, the situation with Jake, but more importantly, we needed to have Jake have information, a statement on file first before we off him. Because what I'm thinking, with all the corruption going on in that department, probably because they do some shady things, they probably wanted somebody squeaky clean to kind of take the fall for everything, right? So they, kind of convinced Jake to, play cards, but Jake is not trying to play because Alonzo technically is in the bathroom just using the restroom, right? So eventually they kind of, kind of convince Jake to start playing cards with him, right? So they start getting information, asking him how long he's been a pig, yada, 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 right? So the whole time Smiley is ice grilling Jake. Like, he's not keeping his eyes off Jake for nothing, okay? He means totally business at this point. So we see Smiley get like a text or something on his phone, because he flips his phone open, looks at it, and closes it. And then he goes and look out the window, right? So Jake was like, I gotta go. They was pretty much saying, well, Alonzo pretty much left you high and dry. So Jake goes look at the window and realize that Alonzo's car ain't there. So I'm deducing that the text that Smiley received was actually from Alonzo, pretty much confirming, like, all right, dog, I'm gone. You need to do what you got to do, what I done paid you for, okay? So Jake was, was like trying to leave. He was like, oh, hell no, Alonzo left me. I got to go. So they forced kind of Jake to, sit down. So they're playing cards. They're kind of playing with each other, his firearm, which was interesting, because I'm like, you're being a little too lax, but I guess they made him feel comfortable. But it was kind of ironic that Jake and Smiley had the same exact gun. So that means a couple things for me, right? That could either mean, or symbolize like, hey, we are more alike than different. Or if this is truly like a police issued gun, because I don't know too much about guns. I'm not even gonna hold you guys. I'm no expert. But have you done this before? Like, I don't know. Is this the first murder for hire that Alonzo has done? Because it seemed fairly kind of easy to kind of hook this thing up. You know what I'm saying? But what I truly feel is that these three characters in this kitchen represents something in this thread of this story. Sorry, guys. Let me give me some water. Sorry, y'all. I've been talking for a minute, so the palate was getting a little scratchy, right? So I kind of can explain this a little later. Let me explain this a little later so y'all could get what I'm saying, right? So, y'all, Smiley started offering information on what really went on in Vegas. So he explains to Jake, what the money is for, because he knows that Alonzo robbed Roger, right? So he pretty much explained that Alonzo was in Vegas. He's a hothead. They explained he's a hothead. So he was in Vegas. This Russian was talking mad crap. Alonzo beat the Russian to death. But the Russian actually ended up being an important person. So now Alonzo is in debt to the Russians for $1 million. And he has to deliver the money by midnight that night to save his life. And he has to do it downtown, right? First of all, I'm like, Alonzo, how many days were you given? Because why are you doing this, applying this scheme, and you cutting it kind of close, sir? Like you couldn't do this yesterday. I don't know. Maybe there's some things he had to get in order, but I'm like, this is cutting it too close. Okay. So maybe he was just sure of himself because, you know, he is very much cocky, right? So Smiley goes to say, like, you know, he don't trust Alonzo. Alonzo don't have no code. He don't even shake his hand because he's grimy. And that's a lot to say about a gangster who's willing to off a cop. Okay. Okay, that's a lot. But Moreno, his number 2, was like, no, I love Alonzo. I love Alonzo. He's grimy. He's ruthless. I love that about him, right? So they start talking about having they quote unquote ish pushed in. So they started talking about man on man assaults, right? And Jake was like, you know what? It's my time to go. So he flips the kitchen table, and maybe he thought that was going to work and he was able to escape. That didn't happen. They ended up beating Jake up and they drag him to the bathroom to the tub. And y'all remember Alonzo said, make sure that tub is clean. So he's been planning it since Jake's house. Since Roger's house, right? So I also want to note that there are so many like religious pieces in this house. Like I even noticed this time watching it that there's a picture of Jesus in the actual shower, not shower curtain. Why I can't think of the name. Shower curtain liner. Like there's a picture of Jesus there. Over the bathroom door, there's a cross. There's multiple crosses and things in this house, right? So this was important to me, I feel like, to the story. So they're, you know, pretty much in the process of about to off Jake. But Moreno was like, no. Let me check his pockets first. But I'm like, would it have made a difference to look at his pockets before or after you murked him? Like, that's like my really a little annoyance part of the movie. And that didn't make sense to me, because why did you need to like delay shooting him to rob him? It's gonna be there when he's dead. Like, I was confused. I'm not too concerned with it because it ended up saving his life, but that was just kind of hilarious to me, right? So they find Letty's wallet in Jake's pocket, right? And like the only other justification I could think for this, if maybe they found Jake's like ATM card and maybe wanted him to, you know, give up his PIN number. Like, that's the only other explanation for keeping him alive while you try to rob him, right? So they open up, Smiley's number 2, Moreno, opens up the wallet, right? He opens it up and notices that Smiley's little cousin, Lady. So Smiley is like, hold up, what's going on here? And Jake is explaining, like, you know, hey, you know, I was trying to save her from assault. Like, I saw in MacArthur Park. Smiley's not believing him. He thinks Jake is lying. He was like, I have a daughter. So I guess Smiley was like, you know what? Let me call Letty to confirm. So he calls Letty. She actually confirms Jake's story. So Smiley's like, this is some trippy shit. So he ends up grabbing Jake up and kind of dusting him off, right? And he was like, you know, this was just business, right? You know, this was just business. He was like, Jake kind of signaled like, yeah, because like, no hard feelings. Like, I don't know you from a can of paint. I was just paid to do a job, Jake. My bad. Okay. But he said, you know, thank you for having my cousin's back. I appreciate it. Right. So, let's take note. Smiley cannot stand Alonzo, but Smiley has a code, right? Because he could have very much still, you know, went through what he was paid to do and off Jake. But he had a code. You know, family probably is very important to him. So the mere fact that Jake saved his little cousin, like, he's appreciative of it, regardless of his situation with Alonzo, and know that Alonzo is ruthless. And in theory, Alonzo could come back and get Smiley. Smiley did not care. But Smiley also probably knows Alonzo may not make it throughout the day because he's into it with the rushes. Maybe or maybe not, right? But because technically Alonzo has the bread. So that shows something. But let's take a look at Moreno. Moreno, his number 2 on the left here. If y'all didn't peep, Moreno, he's robbing a dead man, essentially, right? But if y'all notice, when he opens the wallet of Smiley's little cousin, he takes the money out the little cousin's wallet and puts it in his pocket. Like, you robbing your homeboy's little cousin. Like, how low down, dirty, and ruthless you are. And he mentioned he loved how ruthless Alonzo is, right? And then we have Sniper. Sniper is the predictable one. He's a little loopy. Like, he's not really in his right mind. He's a little insane in the membrane, okay? But I think these three characters kind of represent a lot. I think Smiley represents Jake because he does have a code. He does honor family. I think Moreno represents Alonzo because he is ruthless. He doesn't have a code. He doesn't care about anything. And I think Sniper pretty much represents how should I put this? How people want Jake to be perceived as kind of, there's some psychosis there. There's some like unpredictability there. And he can't necessarily be trusted, but he's kind of like a wild card, you know what I'm saying? And that's how I perceive these characters. I could be wrong, but that's kind of my take on it, right? So now the next scene we see in this movie, Jake is in an empty ass bus cocking his gun. And I'm like, do the bus driver hear that? But we see Jake entering the jungle by himself, something Alonzo told him not to do, right? But in a deleted scene, we see, and I there were some deleted scenes, so I watched them. There's actually a scene where Jake asked Smiley where Alonzo is, and he told him he's in the jungle. So that's how he found out. You know what I'm saying? So that kind of satisfies that question if you guys were interested. But I don't know if I needed that scene or not. I just feel like Jake, his instincts told him Alonzo would be where he's comfortable, where he's lax, where he feels he has control, right? But I also feel like that was kind of to Alonzo's ignorance and his detriment, because you showed Jake too much. You know what I'm saying? You introduced him to not necessarily where you rest your head at, because we haven't seen Alonzo's wife or his home, but this is kind of, I feel like, his secondary home. You know what I'm saying? So the fact that you were so lax, but he didn't expect Jake to survive anyway. So that's why he was so open and, showing Jake all these things, right? But that's to his detriment. So Jake goes to the building. The gangsters are there. They ask, hey, what business you have here? He was like, I'm here to see Alonzo. Now, mind you, Jake is bloody up to the max, okay? Looking like he'd been through hell. And so they was looking like, oh, I'm feeling the energy. So Bone let him through. So Jake go upstairs. He sees a little boy watching TV, as he's always doing, okay? Seemingly so. And so he kind of throws a rock at the window, getting the boy's attention. But look, he asked the boy to open the door. So he asked the little boy, hey, is your dad home? Y'all, when I rewatched this, I cannot believe that I did not realize this was Alonzo's son. Y'all can virtually slap the taste out of my mouth for not realizing this. The signs were there. I don't know what I was doing or thinking when I initially watched this. And I watched this movie probably multiple times. You know how you watch a movie once for real, and then you kind of be in and out. If you watch it, like if you see it on TV, you kind of catch it at different places. But I never peeped or realized that this was Alonzo's son. And I'm like, it all makes sense. The way Alonzo was looking at him earlier that day, this boy is giving mixed, right? And then in the future scenes, as we about to see, he says mijo a lot, which means son. Dear B, you said his conversation with him indicated that. If you're talking about Alonzo with, and Sarah calls him Alonzito, right? And I'm like, but see, Derry, what I was kind of perceiving the conversation Alonzo was having with the little boy, I'm having a perspective like, how a woman has men around her son or her kid, and they play like the uncle role, like, hey, this is, which is, I hate that. But, you be like, hey, this is Uncle Charlie, or how like, somebody's banging somebody's mom, but they still kind of make small talk, with the kids. Like, that's what I was thinking. It never dawned on me that this was Alonzo's son at all. Like, I'm so upset with myself. I'm like, oh my God. Like, I never, you get what I'm saying? Like, I never like put it together. Like, what was I doing? Like, and of course, the future scenes, it makes sense. So Jake tells the little boy, like, hey, go to your favorite hiding space. It was a closet. But I'm like, that ain't really doing nothing, because this is a project and walls be thin. Like, that ain't really protecting him, but I guess he's trying to do what the best he do. So he hears Alonzo laughing, counting money through the bedroom door. And so he kind of, busts in. He was like, all right, Alonzo, put the money in the bag and put the guns, he pretty much, low key trying to arrest Alonzo. And Alonzo was using the stacks of money to clap, like, good job. You're in, sir. You're in the department. You made it. Like, he is going through this. Like, Alonzo ain't playing. Okay. He is going to run this game as far as he can, but Jake is not. But I'm like, this is kind of audacious, Jake, if you ask me. But hey, do what you do, sir. So long story short, he tries to arrest Alonzo. Alonzo ends up being able to distract Jake, and it ends up being an all-out gunfight, because Jake was like, you're not going to make your appointment tonight with the Russians. Okay, that's not happening, Captain, right? So it ends up being a cat and mouse chase. It's kind of reckless because we got a whole little boy in the house. We haven't confirmed. It doesn't seem like Alonzo is really concerned, but maybe he kind of have pressing matters at hand. But still, if you was really responsible, Alonzo, you could have found a more like non-violent way to possibly kind of handle this situation. Don't ask me what that could be, but I just feel like he could, right? So throughout the multiple gunshots, the little boy ends up being in betwixt Alonzo and Jake. And Alonzo's pretty much utilizing his relationship to the little boy. He was like, oh, mijo, me and my mijo is going to leave here together. Like, he knows, Jake's heart, and Jake's not going to truly do anything to try to endanger his son. But the mere fact that Alonzo is trying to call his son, right, and get him to his side. But the little boy, Alonzito, is torn. He's visually torn between going where Alonzo is and going where Jake is, because Jake is calling him too. And I'm like, that is a testament of how trash Alonzo actually is, because he just met Jake earlier that day, spent maybe a couple hours with him, watched little cartoons, ate a little food, and took a nap in one day with this man. And that was enough for him to be confused whether to trust you or him. So that goes to show Alonzo don't spend no time with this little boy. Like, he probably just goes in, screws his mom, and leaves. Say a couple words and leave. You know what I'm saying? Like, that is all I need to see. Like, Alonzo, you trash. Okay. You're a trash human being and you're a deadbeat dad. Okay. Like, that was insane. Like, what? This is your own father, but you don't even trust your father enough to save you from danger. A mess, right? So long story short, Alonzo ends up escaping, going to the roof. Jake ends up finding him. So Alonzito and Sarah, they end up being okay and safe, right? So Alonzo ends up beating Jake's ass on the roof, right? Once he finished doing that, he looks at his clock, probably like, oh, ticky-tacky. So he goes, grabs the money, and then heads to the car, right? He heads to the car, starting up the vehicle. Next thing we see, Jake then jump on a goddamn hood of the car, okay? Jake is giving mosquito energy, okay? Annoying, aggravating energy per Alonzo, okay? So Alonzo is effing up his own vehicle to get Jake off the car, but it ain't working. He's succeeding in effing up his vehicle, but not getting Jake off. So it gets to the point where Alonzo injures his own self by ramming his car into other cars. So Jake is able to actually get some licks in on Alonzo, kind of beating Alonzo's ass a little bit. So Alonzo's kind of like slumped over the car, or under, out of the car. So by this time, all the residents that came out, because they're like, what the hell is going on up in here? Okay. So Alonzo, he says, my ninja. I'm like, at the most awkward and unsuspecting time, he gonna pull out a my ninja on Jake. Okay, like that's what he gonna do. So Alonzo propositions the Bloods to offer Jake for some money. So Bones, he placed a blicky like a couple feet from Alonzo. He was like, I don't know what you think this is, homie, but you got to put in your own work around here. Meanwhile, Jake got the blicky on Alonzo, but Alonzo's so cocky and so delusional. He's telling Jake, like, hey, I'm going to grab this gun, I'm going to grab this money, and I'm going to be out of here. Even though he is at the mercy and in the wrong side of a blicky, okay? And mind you, he grabs his cigarette, so he's smoking the cigarette all cool, calm, and collected, okay? Very much cocky energy. So when Alonzo tries to grab the blicky, Jake shoots him, okay? And he don't just shoot him, he shoot him in the ass. The most humiliating probably place you can shoot a man, okay? It's Given Friday, okay? He was like, you shot me in the ass. Yeah. That shit was hilarious to me, okay? So, Alonzo at this very moment, this when he becomes desperate and the start of crashing out, right? Because he's like, give me the money, Jake. Like, he's bloodied up too. He's like, give me the money, give me the money. Give me my money, Jake. Give me my money. I said, yeah, Alonzo, you've been spending all day robbing folk. And this what you get. This what you get, right? So Jake was like, I told you, this my money. This my evidence. You want to go to jail? You want to go home? So he's pretty much using his own line against him, which was actually fire, right? So he snatches Alonzo's badge off his neck, was like, you don't even deserve this. Not at all, right? So Bones comes in. He points a blicky at Alonzo. He was like, all right, Jake, you can go ahead. We got you. So Alonzo was like, oh, hell no, Jake, give me my money. It's my money and I want it now. Like, Alonzo is pissed off and stressed out at this point, right? So, of course, Alonzo sees this as betrayal, okay? Even though these gangers don't F with him, like he did not expect this ending at all, right? So he proceeds to tell Bones, you disloyal fool ass bitch made punk. Okay, like who cussed like that? Like that's like a grandmama cuss. Like that was from the soul, right? So we now get Alonzo's like infamous rant telling them, like, you know what I'm saying? Y'all, he started doing a lot. He was like, I'm putting cases on all you bitches. 23-hour lockdown, Pelican Bay shoe program, okay? Like, he's not playing. He was like, I run this. You just live here. Like, he's getting very much delusional at this point. And so the residents are over at this point. They was like, you know what? I'm tired of hearing this rant. So they end up going in the house. They was like, But he's not used to that because he used to running the show, right? He's used to running the show. So the crowd leaves. So he's like smoking his cigarette. He was like, you know what? I'm winning anyway. Still being delusional at this point. He says, I'm winning anyway. He don't have his bread at all, but still under the impression that he's on the upper side of things. Like, you got to be delusional to pretty much believe that, right? So next we see he's driving, right? And the director made an interesting shot, right? Because we see an airport sign. And I was paying attention to the arrow. And I also was paying attention to the direction that Alonzo was driving. It looked like he was driving towards the airport. And I remember the three wise men telling Alonzo, like, hey, you need to flee. You need to leave the country. So in my head, I'm like, well, is that Alonzo's next move? Like, oh, he don't have his bread. So was he actually en route to the airport? Because from my recollection, and like I said, I've been to LA a few times, but I feel like the downtown area and the airport are in opposite directions. And he was supposed to hand over the money downtown. You know what I'm saying? So it's really no cars on the road. And it was interesting because there's like emergency vehicles going the opposite direction, right? So in my head, I'm like, well, did they have a ploy like scene that they set up to make sure like there were no police or ambulance like while this particular thing goes down? But anywho, He stops at a stoplight, which is interesting choice to me because all day we've been seeing Orlando break various traffic laws. Okay, this man in broad daylight and seemingly, lunchtime was walking and jaywalking across the street with all these cars. But now, all of a sudden, when there's no cars around, he stopped at a red light. Interesting choice, right? Like the one time we see him following a damn law is at his own detriment. And mind you, he did get shot in the ass. So, we see him kind of adjusting, his buttocks, trying to relieve the tension off one cheek to another. And his car is effed up. But he sees a van kind of approach next to him. And we already know the thug spidey senses is on 1,000. Okay. He looks at the lady. She's smoking a cigarette all calmly. She's looking very Russian-like, might I add. Okay. So Alonzo was like, oh, hell no. So he decides to run the red light and he looks at his peripheral. He didn't see anybody at first, but next thing we see, he's surrounded. Okay. The Russians ain't waste no time. They started to blast on that fuel. It wasn't no pew, pew, pew. It was brrr, like they lit Alonzo up in the car. Then Alonzo decides to open the door. Slugs his way out of the car holding a knife. Like, you literally bringing a knife to a gunfight? Like, Alonzo, what are we doing here? So he kind of lays on the vehicle and they proceed to light more holes into him. I'm like, Alonzo, I am confused. What are we doing here, sir? What are we doing? Like that was hilarious to me, y'all. That was hilarious. But Alonzo got lit up. You know what I'm saying? He got that good old street justice because no, Jake did not take him to jail, but he pretty much took away Alonzo's livelihood, right? He took his bread. So we see Jake, he pulls into his driveway and he gets out the car, and then we hear the police report, an LAPD narcotics officer was killed today, serving a high-risk warrant near LAX. Now, I'm listening to the word choice here because I just told y'all Alonzo was near the airport, but he wasn't serving no high-risk warrant. So what does that tell me? The three wise men, they are behind this cover-up. They don't probably necessarily want to say what exactly happened. They are covering their ass because he was not serving no high-risk warrants. But, they mentioned, he's a decorated officer. He spent 13 years he's a 13-year veteran. So that's the amount of years that Alonzo has been in the force, whatever. But they said he survived his wife and 4 sons. 4 sons. Okay. I did, hear that there's an alternate ending when Jake is kind of communicating with the 3 wise men, but I haven't seen that alternate ending, so I can't really speak too much to it. But yeah, that was pretty much, the movie. I'm sorry, this is a detailed ass review, but it's so deserving because this is such a good ass movie. I still probably could talk another 2 hours. I'm not. But this was just a great movie. But it's so ironic that Alonzo ended up taking a life in Vegas, and he tried to save his life by sacrificing a life, which is Jake. But Jake ended up saving a life, which was Letty, who ended up saving his life. And Jake, who I'm talking about. You see how things happen? Things happen full circle. But Alonzo just being reckless and just being out of control, that was his own demise. You know what I'm saying? But he did so many things, between manipulation, abuse of power, control. He did all the things. And do y'all believe he got what he deserved? Would you have wished he had a different ending? Let me know in the chat and in the replay how y'all feel about the ending of this. But I did have some questions in terms of Jake. What did he end up doing the next day? Did he continue to stay on the force and kept his mouth shut about this? Did he whistle blow on the remaining guilty parties? Like, I don't know. I'm just curious of what Jake did moving forward, because he has been, placed in a predicament where, he could play nice and just kind of not necessarily forget what, happened, but kind of use that to kind of train himself. You know what I'm saying? Maybe he went back to the valley to do patrol because he too traumatized. I don't know, but I want to know what Jake ended up doing because I'm nosy. But it was, full circle moment. Then Alonzo decided to cash out his oldest account, and that closed up, you know what I'm saying, his life, right? And if my theory about Alonzo and Roger's relationship is correct, how ironic and fitting, and that may be an oxymoron, but the fact that Roger and Alonzo both lost their lives the same day, like that kind of shows, like, some symbolism there, you know what I'm saying? But I must say, Alonzo, kudos to you. You did a great job training Jake. Not so good for you. You trained him a little too well. But yeah, it was just a great movie. Like, Alonzo, you succeeded in doing a great job training in the midst of doing all the crimes: murder for hire, conspiracy, actual murder, robbery, improper use of a firearm, what else? Jaywalking, driving under the influence. Like, you have done the things, Alonzo. So kudos to you for doing all those things in the midst of trying to save your life and effing up another. But I love this movie. I probably can watch this 20 more times. And I also love the cinematography, just the use of the shots and the angles. And I also love how they actually utilize LA as a character. I love how Alonzo was able to weave in and out of different neighborhoods. We see him with the, Mexican gangsters. We see him with the Blood area. We see him with the Crips. It was just so much going on. And this movie did not have actually a whole lot of scenes, but each scene was impactful and necessary in its own right. But y'all, that was my review, breakdown, okay, reaction, if you will, to Training Day. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you're watching a replay, please give me a thumbs up. Thank you for sticking around and watching and listening. I will be going live tomorrow, having a panel, just discussing some, fun, food related, Thanksgiving related content. So please check me out there. But until next time, toodles.